You're listening to the JJS Podcast. Up to this point, the most successful companies around the world have had entire departments made up of full-time employees dedicated to providing marketing communication support, leaving every other company without those resources at a distinct disadvantage. Well, the world has changed, and we have to change with it. That's why I'm going to take my 15 years of experience of managing marketing communication strategies for some of the biggest brands in the world and share that knowledge with you so that it can improve your business and your life. So if you're a business professional or an entrepreneur who wants to learn how to deploy the right strategies given your position and the position of the audience you're trying to reach, you're in the right place. Hey guys, welcome to the JJS Podcast. So today I want to talk to you guys about the competition of ideas. So, and as it relates to marketing communications for business, and as it relates to just society in general, what we see happening more and more. So, for those of you who are not familiar, I'm sure many of you are, but for those of you who are not, the competition of ideas is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's this notion that if enough discussion and debate is happening and enough ideas are being thrown out there and being challenged and examined and vetted, that ultimately the best ideas win out, right? And when I was working in some of these huge corporate environments in my capacity as someone in marketing communications, I was in a lot of rooms, part of a lot of meetings where discussions were happening, decisions were being made, and more often than not, someone would have a good idea or the best idea. And sometimes it wasn't even necessarily just the good idea or best idea. It was the obvious idea, just the thing we should obviously do. And it wasn't always necessarily me, but someone would throw that a really good idea out there. And depending on who else was in that room or part of that discussion, and depending on their level in the organization and the level of influence, or sometimes depending on whether or not that idea undermined them or conflicted with their own self-interest, that idea would get shut down. And, as time would unfold, it would turn out oftentimes that was the better idea, and that's probably what we should have done. So, now, in my opinion, I feel like that dynamic is playing out more and more across society. And I think that was a large part of what happened with the Elon Musk situation when he purchased a large amount of shares of Twitter. He recognized that, the same thing many other people have lately, that we're not really permitting a true competition of ideas in a lot of ways, right? He recognized that, and because I try not to be political on this show. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but I try. Because there's a large segment of people who feel that there are ideas that are too toxic or too destructive or too counterproductive to allow to spread and proliferate, right? And people like Elon Musk, although recognize that there's some truth to that, right? There are for sure definitely some ideas that are very dangerous and can radicalize people and get them to do really bad stuff, especially if they call for violence and whatnot. Although that is true, the problem comes in when you start lumping in more and more and more ideas or narratives or arguments or positions into that category. And so, that attitude that, well, we can't allow dangerous ideas to spread starts to kind of lose its significance somewhat if you start pretty much labeling anything you disagree with into that category, right? I personally, again, this is my opinion. Everything on this show that I speak about is my opinion and the opinion of anyone else who's on it. in my opinion, I feel that's a more dangerous approach. Just as I felt it was dangerous or counterproductive to do that in the meetings that I was in, when people would shut down ideas, not necessarily because they were bad ideas, but because it didn't help them. I feel that that's more destructive, because the more and more you do that, the less serious people take all of those things you have said are too dangerous to proliferate, including the truly dangerous ones, right? And so, people like Elon Musk, their position is, look, ultimately, yes, there are bad ideas out there and toxic narratives and whatnot, but ultimately, if you permit a true competition of ideas to take place, those bad ideas and those destructive narratives will be defeated by the better arguments and the better ideas and the better positions, right? But there's a lot of people who either they don't believe that, they believe that the power of social media and its hyper targeting capacity and whatnot really kind of can circumvent that process, or they don't care. It's one of the two. The first argument I can understand, right? There is something to be said for the power of targeting through social media. It's excellent for advertising, right? For people like me who do marketing, but it can also be weaponized, and has been in many cases. So there is something to that, which is a whole nother discussion. But there is a large group of people who that's not necessarily their concern. They just don't like the ideas themselves, right? The ones that are not necessarily truly calling for violence or anything like that. They're just positions that they disagree with. And they, have the ability and inclination to shut down and silence those voices. And so in my opinion, I feel, and I don't know, I've never spoken to Elon Musk, but I would imagine he kind of agrees with this idea that if you begin silencing and kind of broad brushing an entire segment of the ideological spectrum, you actually are causing more damage to your own cause, because whether people agree with you or not on a given issue, a lot of people do not agree with that approach of silencing voices that are not necessarily radical, extremist, violent voices, or calling for, truly, truly destructive and dangerous things. So, and again, going back to marketing communications, if you're someone in business, or you own a business and marketing communications is not your field, I'm not necessarily saying, blindly trust or take the advice of marketing people when they have a strategy or an approach they want to take with your business. Definitely try to vet it, but try to avoid reflexively shutting down an idea simply because you're risk adverse, or because you don't like the person who came from. Sometimes that's the problem, is it's not even about the idea or the message, it's about who it came from. Try to actually be objective and take a kind of clinical approach to marketing strategy and whatnot for your business, because I've seen it happen many times where people on my team or myself will say, hey, I think we should probably do this. There's precedence. We have metrics to show that this is probably the better route to go, and it's shut down completely because it conflicts with somebody's their preconceived notions, or what they would like to be true or whatnot. That's ultimately never going to work in the long run, right? Because the thing is, we all occupy reality, right? and we have no choice but to abide by the confines of reality, and reality does not conform to our preferences, right? It doesn't. It's indifferent to what you want to be true or what you wish was true or how you would like things to be. We have some level of influence over how things turn out, but we don't have ultimate influence over how things turn out. And so if something's a good idea, it's going to be revealed later. It was a good idea. If something's a bad idea, it's going to be revealed later it was a bad idea. So there's nothing anyone could do about that. So, I feel that we should kind of try to allow for more robust debate, be more open to hearing voices and things that, our instinct is to disagree with outright, but, can ultimately provide some kind of insight that you were not privy to before. I think we should permit a true competition of ideas. And I think that's what's happening with it. It's unavoidable to happen. Things like Elon Musk taking over Twitter and things like that. There's no way to avoid those kind of things from happening, because people recognize when you're not really winning a debate or winning an argument or winning a narrative, you're just resorting to silencing your opponents. That doesn't ever work out in the long run. People resist that instinctively, even if they initially agreed with you. They resist that. They don't. It's not a good look. So, hopefully, as time moves forward, and the segment of population I'm referring to recognizes that silencing people or silencing narratives you don't agree with is not effective. Ultimately, it may be effective in the short term, but it's not effective ultimately. You're going to get the opposite of what you're looking for when you do that. Just allow for a greater competition of ideas. Allow for debate and discussion, and truly allow it. And if you're in the business world, if somebody suggests something or suggests a strategy or an approach to you that you question or you're not sure about, try this. Present that idea to a few different people, not people who think just like you, to a few different people, and don't tell them where the idea came from. Don't tell them where, don't give them the context of that. Just say, hey, what do you think about this? And try to get their honest opinion about that approach or that idea or that, that concept, instead of framing it as so-and-so had this idea or told me this, and kind of, cluing the person into how you already feel about it. Just honestly ask different people what they think about it. And, you can do this in a very official way, right? That's one of the most effective things we do in marketing communications is we take pulses. So we will pulse an organization about various things. And in fact, the only issue we ever run into is what I'm describing now, is this idea of not letting certain voices be heard because, people didn't like what they said, right? Leadership will often, and I've talked about that on an early episode, they won't like what they hear. But it's necessary, and you have to allow for a true competition of ideas if you want to benefit from them. And, kind of really try to put your own preconceived notions, on hold for a second and really try to examine things fairly and objectively. I think that will work out better for everyone. I've seen it work out better that way than when you try to silence people. So just wanted to share that with you guys. If you have any feedback or want to leave a comment, be sure to do that. And as always, good luck out there. Hey, I want to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to review and rate it so that other people who are interested in these topics can easily find it. Be sure to share it and tune in every Wednesday for a new episode of the JJS Podcast. Thanks again for listening, and remember, communication without strategy is just noise. Until next time.